sticks with d4, and they play, so far, same opening as the first game. Oh, we have an Imzo Indian. I haven't seen a lot of Imzo Indians this tournament.
Yeah, well, this is actually a sign from Denis that he wants to shake things up. Denis traditionally favors opening up with the queen's pawn. So now we're going to be in territory where things are going to get sharp. And look at this. Magnus, he doesn't actually go in with the queen's pawn. He challenges in the center with the c-pawn, and decisions to be made here. Does Denis play very carefully? Does he reinforce that center? Does he go for some other idea, something that he particularly likes, which is to develop the light squared bishop, fianchetto it, or will we see more aggressive going into the center?
Yeah, typically the aggressive way for white to play in this position is to play g3 and fianchetto the bishop, which I think is to Denis's liking. So I expect Denis to play g3. Seems like he's not super familiar with this position after c5. Maybe he was expecting d5 and getting those more normal queen pawn openings. Instead, Denis plays a surprising move, surprising to me. Takes the pawn on c5, little shrug of the face from Magnus, and bang out a few dozen moves in the opening of his prep, get an equal position. Magnus makes another move I didn't consider, just developing.
Fanned the knight, you can move the bishop up one square. You can also come out with your queen, and maybe Magnus and Denis understanding that actually the game is transposing into a line that perhaps Magnus didn't really want to be going into. Main move here is to come out with the bishop all the way, pin the knight.
I've had white in this position many times in my career because I play queen c2 Nimzo Indian. A3's you're out, whether to fianchetto his queen bishop, which is what he did, or play d5 right away, which he can still do later.
Set a pin. And he goes for another move. Okay, this is normal as well. This is also good. But at some point or another, you have to do what is necessary. And here it comes. That bishop is now going to place itself on the longest diagonal on the board. And now Magnus, he is fighting a space disadvantage. He needs to react.
Yeah, I think I probably had white in this position before just by transposition because I play queen c2 Nimzo so often with white. And often my queen has to move away from c2 at some point before black gets to play rook c8 and d5, and my queen is misplaced. The queen sometimes goes to b1 after the white rook goes to d1 first, or the queen can go to b3. Right now there's no threats. Magnus just castled. So black can play bishop e2 and short castle, put the rooks in the center, and with more space on the queen side, white's slightly better position for white. So Denis should be pretty happy with the result of the opening.
Exactly. So let's just put it on the board, exactly what white wants to do. You can go anywhere you like with the bishops. You can step up one square, even two squares. But either way, you're going to be castling the king to the right and just taking the center with the rooks and just arguing and saying to black, hey, you don't have so much space, and there is going to be an opening up of the center eventually. So I think it's a good position to have when you're in a must-win situation with the white pieces.
No, if I was white here, I'd be happy if I was Denis. Denis has a position where he can get a slight advantage. Magnus is a little passive, not clear what black should do. And Magnus has to make a decision in the next three moves whether to play d6 or d5. And it's not clear what he should play because it leads to different kinds of positions. And I'm not sure what Magnus is going to do. D6 is more of a long game, playing a hedgehog kind of pawn structure we talked about yesterday, where black's pawn's just sitting on the third rank. D5 is more aggressive. Magnus isn't making the decision. He's moving his queen to b8, getting out of this place of the rook. The other rook can go to d8. Magnus isn't going to decide for a couple more moves whether to play d6 or d5. But Magnus doesn't seem very happy. He keeps shaking his head. I think he knows that he's slightly worse and that white has more space on the queen side. This isn't the opening kind of position that Magnus wanted.
Yeah, one of the problems with this type of position is that as white, you're looking actually to unleash the dark squared bishop. So moves that you want to be doing is jumping in with your knight to perhaps the g5 square, moving, or maybe moving the knight to e4. If you manage to transfer the white queen and pick her up, put her on the right side of the board, that is going to be a fearsome attack against the black king. That is the theory. Whether it will be done, as we see these two little luxurious take care of your king moves being played.
I like luxurious. I wasn't thinking that, but that
But there's the
describes it
kind
really
of
well.
moves that you make after you completed development, and still no concrete decision from both sides, except there is no longer going to be any attack towards the black king because the white queen has stepped off that diagonal. And here it's going to be again another long game of maneuvering.
Yeah, and I've had these kinds of positions a lot with white. The c4 pawn is often weak, so I like the queen on b3, bishop on e2, protecting the c4 pawn. Magnus plays queen a8, winding his queen and bishop up on the long diagonal. White played rook d2, which indicates he wants to double rooks on the d file, putting pressure on d6. Typically, white plays bishop f1 at some point, defending the g2 pawn from the queen and bishop. But Magnus doesn't let him play bishop f1. Magnus plays knight b8. He's going to reroute his knight to d7 so that his queen, rook, and bishop on the queen side aren't blocked anymore. The knight usually wants to be on d7, not c6, because the knight on c6 is blocking all of black's pieces. So Magnus maneuvering his pieces around, slightly passive position, but as I've had problems my whole career, hard for white to do anything here. White has more space, but how do you increase your advantage?
Well, I gotta say, black's position is like a spring that is waiting to uncoil, right? So now the knight is gonna get rerouted, maybe even go and step next to its monarch just to hold it in complete defense. And then the whole thing is that black will eventually break forward in the center, and suddenly this queen and bishop, beautiful battery, is gonna be pointing at the light squares. And I'm gonna say that black is completely fine, despite the fact that that queen is there in the corner. We don't advise that queens are living their best life on the edge of the board. And, okay, the rook steps up. What is Denis's plan? And Magnus just keeps on playing the waiting game.
Yeah, typically black plays a6 earlier in this structure to stop white from playing knight b5. But Magnus wasn't worried about knight b5, because then he would counterattack in the center with d5. So white played rook d4, not really sure what white's plan is. He could trade white squared bishops with bishop f3. Okay, so he did. But I'm not sure that gets him anywhere. Black doesn't mind trading and being slightly passive and solid and awaiting developments. For some reason, Lazavik has been taking quite a long time trying to figure out a way to build up his advantage. As a consequence, Magnus has 2 extra minutes on the clock. That could be important later in the game. We can't have this happen every game, Yovi, that Magnus is ahead 1, 2, 3 minutes on the clock. That's not going to bode well for Lazavik.
No, and there you're seeing Magnus, he's maximizing his queen. She's moving forward. The target is that weak pawn, the pawn that cannot be defended there on c4. That's exactly what Magnus is thinking. Maybe he's going to even triple on that half-open line, and there's going to be huge pressure for Denis as the clock ticks down. And remember, if Denis wants to take this match to Armageddon, if he wants to level, he needs to win with the white pieces. And the problem is there's no easy point of attack. Everything in Magnus's position is well defended. This is the description of overprotection.
No, this is really nice maneuver using the first rank. Super grandmasters are great at using the first rank to maneuver their pieces. Knight b8 to d7. I've seen that before. And now Magnus very quickly plays b5, putting pressure on the pawn on c4. And once the c and b pawns are traded, then Magnus can play d5 later, and the rooks on the d file are sort of hitting on that strong d pawn. I actually like black's position now. I'd rather have black. This doesn't look like white can do anything. And not only that, Denis is taking a lot of time. Looks like he's really getting outplayed this game. Black has the advantage. Black has more center pawns. Black has 3 extra minutes. So far, advantage Magnus. And it's a must-win game for Denis. Denis is down 2-1. It's a 4-game match, the first set. Denis has to win to force Armageddon. Otherwise, he's down 1-0. So far, it's looking like all Magnus this game, Yovi.
Yeah, I was going to say, look at that. The knight comes in, it's going to post up into the middle of the board. And the thing is, and this is going to be Denis's biggest challenge, is that his strengths are the same strengths that Magnus possesses. They have very much the same style. It's very clinical, very patient, and we see why Magnus is the world number one. So decision here, do you recapture with the knight? That looks very logical. Or do you just start to change the nature of the position? He takes with the pawn, and now I'm expecting those pawns to start advancing.
Yeah, I like this. I like what's transpired here and perspired for Denis, because the game is really tricky now with game becoming completely asymmetrical. Black's position is still better, but at least White has two passed pawns, something you can look forward to later. Magnus is going to have to play his best game now to make sure White doesn't advance those pawns and make sure Denis doesn't blockade the queenside pawns. Magnus played the moves he thought they were the best. But maybe this made the game trickier and puts Denis back in the game, even though Denis has a big time disadvantage. Maybe he can catch up if Magnus can't figure out how to prosecute this initiative in the center.
Yeah, he doesn't have to rush, though, because it's not going to be very easy for White to mobilize the pawns on the left. You know, if you step up with one pawn, the bishop is going to come in, perhaps capture, perhaps start eyeballing some squares. So this position definitely has gotten a lot riskier for both sides, but Magnus still has some time. He does improve his king, and Denis needing to win, he starts to grab space on the right side of the board. But the left is where it's all happening.
No, I think Magnus still has an excellent position, but I think the match dictates that since White must win, things have been improving White's position for that perspective. I think there's more winning chances. Pushing all of his pawns on both sides of the board, Magnus trades the knights. Magnus shaking his head, doesn't like the way he's been playing this position. The engine agrees. The engine actually likes White now. White has a nice blockade in the center. Ooh. White's playing aggressively on the king side. F5, very aggressive move from Denis.
Yeah, but what a beautiful move, because suddenly, what are you going to do about the pawn that's under fire? If you step up, chase away the white knight, well, it leaves behind a weak sibling there in the middle. That's not going to be easy to defend. And suddenly, just like that, Black's pawns could have become immobilized and now sitting targets. And we could here be seeing perhaps the start of Denis taking over. Tax the rook. Rook has to move. Now you can come over with the other pawn. And it's going to be White's two pawns on the left that are going to be racing up the board. Denis, 1 minute and 26 seconds. And he has to generate play. He has to put the pressure. He doesn't play the pawn move that I wanted. Instead, he challenges in the center. Is this the right direction, though?
Denis is making a lot of pawn moves, F5, B5, E4. The engine likes some of them, doesn't like other ones. It says the position's about equal. Denis still has a problem on the clock, but this is a 3-result game. All 3 results can happen. Both sides have lots of passed pawns. Magnus sacrifices the exchange, getting rid of White's dangerous passed B pawn. Now, Black has 2 dangerous pawns. Magnus is pretty happy with himself. I think he likes his exchange sack because he has the beautiful pawn duo on D4 and C4.
Exactly, and he's going to take over because it's not about what the pieces are, it's what they do. And take a look at that pawn center that Magnus has. They are primed and ready to advance. And Magnus doesn't even have to rush. He can do things in his normal trademark style. Just start improving the king. He can also improve the knight. It's going to be such a difficult task for Denis to win this one. Magnus advancing the pawn. So maybe Denis can do the same in turn. Maybe he can sacrifice some pieces.
Boy, Magnus is really excited at this point in time. He's really yelling at what's going on. C3, the D pawn is pinned. The D4 pawn is pinned. The bishop on C3 is pinned. Everything is pinned in the center. There's a lot of tactics. King E8, the engine likes that move, defending the knight. We couldn't take the bishop on C3 because the knight was hanging. Now both sides have passed pawns.
But definitely, I got to say that Denis is improving his position as he's gotten rid of Black's biggest asset. But we're seeing Magnus, he's just holding firm. He does have plenty of material for that sacrificed exchange, the rook, and now the rook coming down. I mean, he's got a lovely fortress going on, and just take a look at Denis's time, under 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. 27 seconds. Magnus has 1:49. The position's about equal. Black has more than enough compensation for the exchange. Magnus is putting his knight in on f4. Magnus has the better king with king e5. The engine says Magnus is taking over now. White's rooks are really terrible behind all those pawns. All of White's pawns are hanging. Magnus is now winning on the board and on the clock. Magnus's pawns are too strong, and White's in a lot of trouble. Here comes the F pawn. Here comes the D pawn. Here comes the black king. As we like to say, black is a king ahead. White's king isn't playing. Black's king is on the 5th rank. And
there comes another one. A beautiful
bishop c3.
block.
Beautiful move.
Yes.
And several seconds left. Lazavik